Awesome. Edward, are you there?
I am here. Yep, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can. Welcome to the book show, the one student, one book, one author mantra, the Global Readers Circle, the ultimate podcast that is designed to inspire and motivate a committed reader and a lifelong learner out of every global person. On behalf of a community and a global audience, allow me to make welcome author Edward Burley. Author Edward, how are you doing?
I am good, my friend. How are you?
We're blessed. We appreciate you for finding the time to lend a voice on our Global Book Show podcast. Well, first, we like you to know that you'll be having fun on the show. You'll be revealing the secret, well kept secret about reading, and you'll also be talking about your journey into authorhood. I'm sure you're ready for our 10 books challenge.
Yeah, well, like I told you, I've rewritten it 3 times, so.
Awesome, awesome. So first, let's start by talking about you. I'd like you to tell us about yourself. Who is author Edward Burley?
He is a married father of two wonderful children. Um, he's a guitar player. I play in an alternative rock band called Fallen Child. You can stream our music on YouTube, Amazon Music,
Wow,
Spotify.
wow,
And yeah, I am the author of Blame. And then next summer, my second book, Agency, is due to be released. So
wow, wow.
there's a lot going
You
on.
are you are a massive asset in this world of creativity. You do music too?
I do, yeah. And I
Wow,
think the commonality between music and writing, I see it as it's an incredibly spiritual act.
wow,
Creativity, it doesn't matter what it is. I
wow.
believe it gets you closer to the life source. I mean, you can call it
Hmm,
God,
hmm,
you can call it whatever you want, but the idea of creating something and giving to the world rather than taking from
hmm.
it,
Wow,
yeah, that's my personal belief anyway.
wow. The word spirituality, it speaks volume. Well, I'd like you to talk about your reading lifestyle. I'd like you to tell us, when did you find the love for reading, and when did you keep reading an intentional asset on your everyday activity? Would you say you would pass for an avid analytical reader?
Definitely. Yeah. And I mean, my journey, I was blessed. I started young. I mean, my parents read to me from a really early age, and my grandmother would tell me that at the age of 3, I could sit down on my sofa at home, open a book, and I could recite it word for word, and I knew exactly when to turn the page. So I wasn't actually reading it, but I was aware of the process of reading and books and what books could give you.
Wow. Wow, amazing, amazing. The consciousness. You had a family who blessed you with that knowledge and revealed that secret for you. And and
Absolutely, an
and I would
incredibly
like to
early
say
age.
that's very incredible. That's really incredible from your grandmother. Wow. So let's talk about your evolving lifestyle as a reader. What changed? What has happened to the person you are? Are your topics, the subject, are they evolving? What's going on with this lifelong learning asset you found?
Well, the great thing about reading as a medium is it can do so many things for you. It can inform you, whether
Mm,
it's historical or it's the life of somebody you know or somebody you inspired. It can entertain you.
mm,
You know, it can take you into space, it can take you underground, it can take you around the world. It's just limitless. And I
wow.
think that power has been lost,
Mm,
certainly in the modern day.
mm. And yet, the power written down in words, the power of authors, their writings, the power of books, and like you said, they are limitless. And why would you think that in the modern world today, we are doing away with this asset. And as an author, what would you say can happen to ignite that fire again in our current generation?
Well, I think authors and, well, anybody's words that have been written down, it's all about the sharing of ideas.
Hmm.
And then ideas can literally change the world. You can't downplay it. And I think whereas in the modern day we're so used to being spoon fed information because it's coming at us all the time,
Hmm.
rarely do we go and look for it. And I think we've kind of lost our way. You know, like the Wizard of Oz, Wicked just came out. We're fixated on the big face. We are not taking the time to look behind the curtain and
Yeah,
see what's really going on.
yeah, yeah. Amazing, amazing. So let's talk about your journey into authorhood. Obviously, you should have read so much to write so much. Why did you get so inspired looking at your title and everything involved? What would you say you did?
Well, blame comes from a conversation that I had at my time in university. I mean, I watched the invasion of the Iraq War live on television
Hmm.
with three of my university friends. And then we were having a conversation, and I just threw something offhand like, the three of us, three white British students, could go and blow up anywhere in the world, and we would be the last people to be suspected of doing that.
Yeah.
And there's something scary, and there's also something wrong about that. And it seems that attitudes haven't really changed
Hmm.
as far as I'm concerned. I mean, if we look at British politics, we had to ordeal that harrowing Brexit, where
Hmm.
politicians were saying, these people are coming over, they're taking your jobs, they're taking your children's places in schools, they're doing all that. And it's just not right. It really isn't right. I mean, we're blessed to have so many different cultures in the world so that we can learn more about the human condition, about different ways of thinking, about
Hmm.
how we progress, so we don't end up blowing each other up.
Yeah.
And yet we still do.
Hmm.
And that really got under my skin. So like you say, the title of the book, Blame, it's about blaming others rather than taking personal responsibility, not just on an individual level, but on a societal level or even on a
Wow.
global societal level.
Wow. Wow. Author Edward, you did something outstanding, and that's so super incredible.
Well, I thank you very much.
Well, I realize that you're trying to solve a problem with this, right? What would you say your book is trying to do? I know you're trying to get us individuals in the world today to take blame or take responsibilities for everything we've lost. Now, being an author, do you think that readers can solve our problems? Do you think reading as a culture can solve our problems? Looking at our dump war. So, with your right, what are you trying to do with it?
What am I trying to do? Well, I came across the writings of Charles Dickens when I
Hmm.
was in my early,
A tale
like
of two
10 or,
cities.
yeah, 10 or 11, and Dickens, obviously, he talked a lot in his writings about the social political climate of his time, Victorian England. So I thought,
Hmm.
now why don't we take that idea and try and modernize it?
Wow.
Essentially, that's what I'm trying to do. So,
Wow.
as we go through Blame, I shed light on the homeless pandemic, which is
Hmm.
gripping the world at the minute.
Hmm.
We look at protesting and the right to protest.
Hmm.
We look at, because of the actions of my protagonist in my book, they end up arming the police, which is
Hmm.
extremely rare in Britain. And
Hmm.
then the protesters basically come up with a little scheme to get on the radio to discuss that. Because, I mean, if that's a precedent, if that's the bottom line, now where do we go from there? How far does it go? And
Hmm.
again, that's another great question.
Hmm.
You know, freedom of liberty, all that
Hmm.
sort of thing. It's just so vast. It was just having to pick certain things that I could add to the narrative, like I said, to try and shed some light on this thing.
Wow. Wow. Amazing. You did incredible. You did incredible. And you're talking about your next book, your next calf. What should we be expecting?
Ah, yes. My next book is called Agency. Now, I have, for the past 20 years, I have been employed in the social care sector because,
Hmm.
as part of my degree, we looked at, you know,
Yeah.
underprivileged in society, all that. And I've always believed in trying to give back or trying to, you know, trying to help people. So,
Hmm.
Agency basically looks at the climate of social care. I mean, it's forever in the news, but as far as I'm concerned, it's not about, we don't need billions of pounds, we don't need endless resources. We just need to do the best with what we've got. And in
Hmm.
many ways it's saying a thank you to, you know, all the selfless people all around the world that give their time in service to others.
Hmm. Wow. Wow.
Except
Amazing.
I've just coated it in a crime drama, basically.
Hmm. Hmm. Wow. Wow. From blame to agency. Wow, Edward Burley, you're doing so well in this big ministry of creativity. But this is the point where I would love you to talk about this creativity. You said you are a musician. So I like to explore your music on the spotlight. Let's talk about your music. What kind of a musician would you say you are, and
Uh,
do you? How would you say? What would you say? Okay, let me put it this way. What would you say about your life as a musician and your life as a writer? What has been the common denominator in this big ministry of creativity? I like to ask
um,
our audience.
well, okie dokie. Well, the first thing has got to be, like I said earlier, I believe it's a spiritual act.
Hmm.
Um, and the second thing is it's about connecting with people
Hmm.
on a human level, you know? And the
Hmm.
great thing about music and writing is it's goes through very few filters. So if you're honest with yourself and you're honest with the message that you're trying to give to people,
Yeah.
hopefully you will hit that vibration.
Hmm.
That's that's the way I've always seen it, you know? And it's a healthy escape as well. As far as
Wow.
I'm concerned, it keeps my hands busy, you know? I'm
Yeah.
either holding a pen or holding a guitar.
Wow.
I'm not trying to bring the noise of the world down in
Hmm.
other ways.
Wow. I can imagine that with all the normal intricacies of everyday life, you still find the commitment and the discipline to do all of this. Well, you're yet to tell us what kind of a musician are you? You talk about spirituality, but we need to know if I listen to your songs,
Ah,
if I listen to your songs, what's gonna go on? What's gonna happen to me? What kind of person am I gonna be dancing? Am I going to start crying and worshiping? What? Just let us into
it
your
could be
life. Yeah.
it could be a bit of both, my friend. I mean, I'm a guitar player. I've always loved guitars.
Wow.
And I play in an alternative rock band.
Hmm.
So,
Wow.
and the reason I became an author is we were starting pre-production on our second album,
Hmm.
and the restrictions for COVID were a hit.
Hmm.
So we could no longer rehearse, and I had all this creative energy buzzing around my system trying to find an inlay.
Hmm.
So I remember that rain again. Brexit came up again, and I was just I thought back to that conversation. I was like, do you know what? I'm going to try and write. You know, I've always loved books. Books have always inspired my music just as much as
Wow.
books inspire my journey now. So
Wow.
you know,
Wow. Amazing. Amazing. On the one student, one book, one author mantra, we are having an awesome moment, an engrossed moment with this massive creative in the house, Edward Barley. Edward Barley who passed for a guitarist, a songwriter, and now the author of Blame. well, you need to give the stream a good listening and make sure that you share this session with your friends. Well, Edward Bali, for you as a person, I'd like you to tell us, what would you imagine your life to have looked like? What would your life turn out to be if you were not a lover of books? If you did not discover this asset that can help any person, any manner of person, become this next great thing? What do you think would have happened to Edward Burley if he had not become this person he is intentionally?
He'd have probably gone mad. And I don't mean that in any derogatory way at all. I think, like I said, I don't know if I said it earlier, I believe you have to feed your brain or your brain will feed on you.
Yeah,
you know. And
yeah.
psychologists, the longer you stare into the abyss stares back at you. And I think a
Mm,
lot of people struggle with that. I think a lot of people are suddenly waking up to a lot of the superficial things in the world. And
mm,
that's why so many young people, I believe, are struggling because
mm,
they're desperately trying to find this connection,
mm,
but what's presented to them is just it's almost shallow mirage, maybe a
mm,
good way to put it. So they
mm,
go for that thing and they try and grab onto it, and it's almost like smoke. There's no substance to it. There's
mm,
nothing there. And I
mm,
mean that's why they're feeling so disheartened. So what we've got to try and do is we've got to coin Zach De La Rocca from Rage Against the Machine. We've got to take the power back. We've got to give them something they can invest themselves in to make them
mm,
feel good, to make them feel alive, to make them want to give back.
mm, mm. Awesome, awesome, incredible. Well, Edward, talking about reading and the young people, what would you rather say are the way forward for our global community to ignite the reading passion back in our schools, on our streets? And I know reading is beyond school. What do you think? What would you say can be done to ignite this fire, regardless of all of the intricacies of everyday life on a global scale today?
Well, like we were saying, at the moment everyone's trying to grasp at smoke. So, all we can do really is try and turn their attention to what's come before. I mean, there's a wonderful quote by Sir Winston Churchill that
Mm,
says, "The further backwards you can look, the further forward you will see." And I
mm,
really, really, really believe that. So,
mm,
it's about, I don't know, you got to ignite that fire. I mean, how we do it, I mean, everyone, most of the population now have got a mobile phone in their pocket. And the thing is, yes, okay, we've got all these social media platforms, but we've also got search engines, and you can tap anything into a search engine
mm,
and immediately find information on whatever topic you want in the world. And I think that is a far better pursuit of time. And through that, you just kind of like follow the strand. And then that will eventually, if that sparks your interest, it can't help but feed you back to something that's come before it. And then that's how we reintroduce reading. Because hopefully, the more you know, the more you want to know. You
mm,
know, and I think
mm,
part of aging is all about wanting to learn more and investing. Because well, I suppose you have a choice to remain ignorant, but for me, it just doesn't. I can't live like that. I need to keep feeding. I need to do something. You
wow,
know,
wow,
I've only got a limited time on this earth, this soul in this body, and I like to think that I help my fellow people out, even if it's just in a small capacity.
wow, amazing, amazing. Well, we believe that you become the books you read and the people that you meet. Well, you talk about media. Do you think it is possible to leverage the power of social media or the media in general to ignite that passion that inspiration for every person to pick up the hard copy of a book, read it for the first 1 hour for the first time, read it the next day at least for an hour, and obviously complete the book and share a review with a friend. What do you think the media, the social media also included, can be can we leverage the power of the media to help ignite this fire? Can it do you see the possibility?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I was thinking about this earlier. Okay, so one of the arguably the biggest entertainment industry corporation, what have you, is Disney. Right. Well, let's run the clock back. The
Yeah.
first film Disney made that entire company was built on was a little feature called Snow White.
Mm.
Now, Snow White came from a book. It's a fairy tale that was written by the brothers Grimm. So
Mm.
the entire Disney corporation is founded on literature. And
Wow.
that's what we need to remind people of.
Mm. Mm. True. 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 Because it is not possible for you to do a lot without writing. And
Well,
this leads us to where we have to talk about your writing.
mhm.
Uh, how do we get to find your book? How many pages do you have on there? And is it possible that you are a social media person? How do we get to find you on social media? Can one share review? Can one engage with you? Do you have a readers club? Whatever. Tell us, how do we get to read your book? Is it on Amazon? And how do we get to build that reading report so that the people who can leverage the opportunity of reading and also getting an opportunity to build a report irrespective of wherever you are, this could be possible for them?
Well, it's quite simple. If you go on any search engine and type in Edward Burley, Burley, blame, Uh, up the book will come, and there's links you can buy it. It's available through my publisher. It's available through, I think it's Waterstones, UK and Ireland. It's available through Barnes and Noble for
Mm,
our UK, our US and Canadian friends, and a
wow.
few outlets as well. And if you want to get to me, the easiest thing to do is go onto my Instagram, which is where I'm most active. Either type in my name, only it's shortened. It's not Edward, it's Ed Burley, Burley. And my handle is at his master writes, which is a play on words from HMV, which is a really big um, record shop in the UK. And it
Wow.
also pays homage to my dog. So it's not just me in books. You also get to see my dog Pippin, who is my faithful companion throughout all this. I even refer to him as my ghost writer
Wow,
when I post.
wow,
So
wow. Wow, that's super incredible. Well, at what Bali, on the occasion of the One Student, One Book, One Author mantra, the Global Readers Circle, you have become a huge inspiration and your wordings are striking chords. Well, we get to the part of this podcast where you would love us to know the books that has inspired you all through this journey, the books that you would recommend, the books that you have probably reread, and the books that you are open to sharing review. And I'm sure you would be willing to take that challenge, Edward Bali.
yeah, well, like I told you, I've rewritten it 3 times. So
Hmm.
this might not be the definitive list, but these are the ones that really speak to me. So
Wow. Wow. Well, you get to mention the name of the book, the title, and you get to mention the name of that author. And you get to throw some light and you get to talk about the ones that really had made significant wonder for you.
okie dokie. So we're going to start with Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor
Wow.
Frankl.
Wow. Man
That had
search for meaning. Awesome. Go on.
yeah
Go
yeah
on.
yeah. No, he was a Jewish doctor that was Well, he endured the absolute horrors of the Holocaust. I do believe all he lost all his family to that
Mm,
horrific time in history. But what stuck with me is the way they survived was holding on to something, like the title of the book allures you to. Man's search for meaning. What am I living for? What do I want my legacy to be? You know, in
wow.
their view, how on earth are we going to get out of this hell?
Mm,
And I mean, I think it's a book that stays with you and leaves an impression on you.
wow.
You know, I think I was going through some things at the time, and it just put everything into perspective. I mean, if that man can use his strength, his faith, you know, to overcome that, then I really didn't have a lot of excuses. And I've read that a few times, and I've recommended it to people as well.
Wow. Awesome.
So
Awesome.
that's the
So that will
first one.
pass for number one. Go on. Number two.
Right. So the second one would be Morse by Art Spiegelman.
Must.
That Morse, Maus, is technically a comic book, but I thought I'd slip it in there because I love comics.
Wow.
and again, that looks at Art Spiegelman. It's about his retelling his father's experiences again
Mm,
through the Holocaust, but through the anthropomorphic lens of mice. Hence the title Morse. And
mm,
again, I've read that several times.
mm.
And that, yeah, again, that one lives with me.
Wow.
It really
Awesome. Number
does.
three. Number three.
Number
Let's go.
three
You got
is
this.
number three is 1984 by George Orwell.
Mm,
That is the first book of that kind I read, and well, I think that book speaks for itself. To be perfectly honest,
mm,
and I think the most amazing thing about Orwell is how relevant it still remains.
mm.
And I think its relevance may even be growing as we're moving to a lot more technological era, shall we say.
Yeah. Yeah. True. True.
Okay. So, number four is Oliver Twist by my hero Charles Dickens.
Wow.
Surprise, surprise
Oh
there.
God, Burley. Wow. Wow. Awesome.
you know,
Awesome. Go
yeah,
on.
yeah,
Go
yeah.
on. You're listening.
It was a toss up between that and Animal Farm, but I thought, no, I read Oliver Twist first, so that's
Hmm.
got to go on there. Okay, so my fifth choice is On the Road by Jack Kerouac.
Wow. On the road.
Again, yeah, about the journey, all about the journey, and how he interacts with all these different people on the journey through the narrative of the book. And
Wow.
it reminded me of David Bowie, one of my musical heroes, because he used to say he was a collector. He collected things. So obviously on the journey, Jack meets all these
Hmm.
different people, has all these different experiences. And then I fed that back into my writing and everyday practice.
Wow.
So everything you do in everyday life has meaning. It's
Hmm.
not just living your life. You're not just on the daily grind. So if
Hmm.
you're open, if you leave your house and you're open to ideas, if you overhear a conversation, or you see something like the other day, I saw a fire truck being filled at a gas station. Now we all
Hmm.
know it happens, but we don't usually witness it. So I was like, right, I'm going to make a note of that. So if ever there's a pause in my narrative
Hmm.
of a future story, I can add that in. And
Hmm.
it just now everything's inspiring. Every day is inspiring. I mean, you
Maybe,
just
maybe because you are a creative and you are constantly looking at characters to admire in people or scenarios. Awesome. Awesome.
absolutely.
Edward Burley, you got this. You got
Okay,
this.
so are we number six? I think we are.
Yeah, number six. Yeah, number
Right.
six.
Number six is Dan Brown's little book called The Da Vinci Code.
The Da Vinci Code.
And
Wow.
what I admired so much about that book is like every good art, it opened up so much conversation around faith, around everything. And that is what good art should do. It was a moment in time. I
Wow.
mean, I had conversations with my relatives that would profess they weren't avid readers about reading that book. It had such a cultural significance. And
Hmm.
then again, that's something I hopefully aspire to do through my own work.
Wow. Amazing. Amazing. Go on, Otto
Okay,
Edward. Number
number seven.
seven. Go
Number
on.
seven is The Bone Collector by Jeffrey Deaver,
Hmm.
which that was Blaine, despite everything we discussed, is still a crime thriller. And Jeffrey Deaver is just one of the best when it comes to that genre. So, and I also like the fact that the linking back to sociology, the Bone Collector, the crimes are based on a book that the protagonist has,
Hmm.
and there are obviously several books that we can name through British history that have not British history, world history that have inspired certain acts, unspeakable acts. I mean, the Turner Diaries is definitely one. I
Yeah.
mean, there's a whole list of them. We could go on and on and on and on and on, but I really like that.
Well, that would pass for only one. So
Yeah, 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 yeah.
you still have some more road to go. Edward
Okay.
Burley, you've been awesome on the podcast, and we are so humbled. You're so humbled that you find the discipline, the commitment to stay a lifelong learner. Now we are sharing it with you. So let's go.
All right. Number eight is the first Stephen King book I ever read. It's called Salem's Lot.
What did you
It's
call
the
it?
Salem's Lot by Stephen
Oh,
King, the
wow.
undisputed king of horror. And what I loved about Salem's Lot is it teaches you how to build worlds. Build towns, inhabit the towns, create mood, create atmosphere in which you weave your narrative through. I learned a lot from that book.
Wow. Wow.
Right.
Stephen King.
Number nine, I do believe.
Number nine. Go on. You
Number
got this.
nine. I'm going a bit tangent again. I apologize. It is Sandman by the masterful Neil Gaiman,
Hmm.
about how you can take mythologies and anthropomorphize them and weave them into narratives. I mean, I could have listed all Neil Gaiman's books on this list, but I stuck with Sandman because technically there's 6 volumes of that, and I can get away with it.
Wow. Wow.
And then that brings us to number 10, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. I thought you
And
would
this,
lose count. Go on. Number 10.
no, number 10 is my favorite book I had as a child. It's by Roald Dahl and it's called George's Marvelous Medicine.
Hmm.
And I have got a lot of time for Mr. Dahl. I don't know anybody who's ever written children's stories better.
Hmm.
Um, and my main confession is when I was 8 years old, I actually tried to make George's Marvelous Medicine in my bathroom with everything in my parents' house. Good news is I was smart enough not to drink it.
Wow.
But then again, that illustrates the power of stories to ignite the imagination, you know?
Wow. 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 You are incredible. Well, let me ask you, for our audience who has been listening to you, I'd like you to share with us. Do you remember any event, occurrence that an idea, knowledge that you had stumbled upon from a book had helped you solve the problem? I like to ask
Oh,
that again if you did not get that question. We like to talk about the moment, that scenario, that event, that an idea you read from a book and help you solve a problem in real life time. Aside that, we know you try to do your own magic.
Yes, there is a there's a book. Again, it's a graphic novel. It's called Viva Vendetta. It's by Alan Moore, who's by one of my hero. He's one of my biggest heroes. And there's a line in it that says ideas are bulletproof. And that hit me like a ton of bricks. And he's
Yeah.
perfectly right. Things can be corrupted, things can be misled, but ideas, if you've got a good idea and you put it out in the world, it cannot be corrupted, and hopefully it can inspire change.
Wow. Wow. Awesome. Awesome. Well, if you're streaming this, we've been onto an amazing figure, a musician, a guitarist, a songwriter, an author of authority. Edward Burley has been so awesome on the spotlight, and trust me, you can afford to miss streaming the session. You can afford to devour the session alone. You will need to share the link with your friends. You will need to invite your family. They ought to know that in this massive world of creativity, there are a lot of people like Edward Burley that are doing so much, and they are staying committed and very inspired by reading their way up and staying that intentional lifelong learner. Well, as a tradition is, we're going to be leaving Edward Barley link on a podcast note so you can have an opportunity to devour Edward's blame. And trust me, you would need to blame yourself and take responsibility and become that intentional reader. Wow. Edward, thank you very much for lending the voice on our book show. And we're hoping that you're going to be a part of our global community. You're going to be part of our webinar, our Zoom meet and greet. And because you're doing so much, we would wonder love you to be on our spotlight, on our top spot, somewhere in Asia or Africa, and tell one boy that it's possible with your guitar. We look forward to have you on our show again. Thank you for being an amazing figure. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, and I cannot wait for whatever unfolds in the future.
Wow, thank you. Well, before you go, we love you to leave your last words. What would you say to that boy who is yet to read a book? What would you say to that girl who has an opportunity to have a grandmother like you did, and yet she has refused to read one book, even with all the books around her? What would be your last word to the people who are contributing to our dumb war? To these races, to these people who would never want this world to be in peace. Author Edward Burley, with your author's authority, leave your last word to these people.
Well, again, I was blessed. My grandfather always taught me that knowledge is power, and I firmly stand by that. The more you can understand, the more you can make traction in this world. And I came up with an idea the other day for a science fiction book that when we give AI its own individual thought, it's blatantly going to turn around and try and destroy us. So the only way we're going to get out of it is we're going to pull the plug. Okay? So we've lost all
Wow,
technology. Technology's gone. What are we going to do? The only source of human knowledge left will be right back at the beginning. It will be
wow,
books.
wow,
So the
wow,
quicker you start going back to the source and getting that knowledge, it doesn't matter what technology does, you will always have knowledge and therefore you will forever have power.
wow. Wow, I should have read somewhere that the application of knowledge is power. Edward Burley, thank you very much for being so powerful on the spotlight. Thank you very much for lending your voice. We do appreciate. Thank you. You represent so much in this big ministry of reading, literacy, and creativity. Thank you for putting on all the commitment, the discipline to do this. We really do appreciate. Thank you.
I appreciate you too, my friend. Thank you so much.
a location of the one student, one book, one author mantra, the Global Reader Circle, the ultimate podcast that is designed to inspire, motivate a lifelong learner and a committed reader out of every global person. Well, on behalf of a global audience and family, we've been on to author Edward Burley from the UK, and Edward has been so powerful on the spotlight. Trust me, you will need to stream the session, share with your friend, leave a word that readers are doers, and that you would become the books you read and the people that you would meet 5 years, 10 years from now. So you have an opportunity to meet people like Edward Barley. Guardian Cross Podcast got you. Thank you, everybody. On behalf of a global audience, it has been your host, Smart Stewart Udo. Thank you, Edward. Thank you.
Thank you, my friend.